Hello, everyone, and a huge welcome back to another episode of the Deep In Coffee Hour. It's your host, Neil Sisson, the CMO here at Havelo, and it is fantastic to have you with us again today. Just before I introduce our guests today, who I'm very excited to talk to, I'd just like to say a quick and massive thank you to our entire community for making Airdrop Season 2 such a success. I'm thrilled to report that it ran very smoothly. And, most importantly, all of the rewards went to genuine hardworking members in our community, which is exactly where they belong. The team is we're still pulling together all of the learnings and things that, things that went well and things that we could have done better from that whole process. We're making those insights into making Season 3 even more advanced and rewarding. We have a lot of stuff coming down the line to speak of the future. So between now and Christmas, there's going to be just a ton of stuff happening here at Havelo. So yeah, if you're in our community, if you haven't joined yet, come on over to Discord. We're going to be giving away a ton of stuff. There's just going to be a lot of activity. And Airdrop Season 3, of course, will be, my hope is that we're going to level the playing field even more than we were able to in Season 2. So everybody's going to have a really great opportunity to secure a huge number of airdrop points ahead of the main, ahead of airdrop 3 in whenever the date is announced for that. So just as a quick reminder, for anyone looking to get involved or to top up HVLO, the token is available right now on Banksa. You can use a credit card directly through our Banksa integration on the dashboard, or you can also buy HVLO on centralized exchanges like MEXC and Gate.io. For those of you with the more decentralized proclivity, you can, of course, find us on Radium. And we're always exploring other exchange opportunities, but couldn't possibly talk about that yet. Just before we get to our guests, I'll leave you with one little piece of, let's call it, wild speculation. If you happen to have unstaked HVLO sitting in your Havelo dashboard, for example, perhaps you got some in an airdrop and you didn't sell it or stake it yet. Well, it's a little bit too early to give you details, but let's just say that HVLO may not be as idle as you think it is. So I'll just leave it there with that one. And this spirit of innovation and building is exactly what today's show is all about. So we're going to be looking at how the DPN ecosystem is maturing, and to help us unpack it all, I have three fantastic guests with me today. Joining us first is Amar, CEO and founder of Tashi Network. He and Tashi are pioneering a developer-friendly, decentralized cloud infrastructure that turns everyday devices into powerful network resources, essentially creating the Web3 version of Vercel for seamless gaming and app development. Hey, Amar.
Hey, Neil.
All right, how on point is that? Is that a good intro?
Sorry, can you just repeat that?
I'm just wondering, did you hear the intro that I just gave about you and Tashi?
Yes, I missed the last line. I think I was speaking over you and there was just overlap.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, StreamYard sometimes. I was just saying that you're essentially creating a Web3 version of Vercel, for want of a better comparison.
I think the bright comparison is that we're building like a Web3 version of AWS. So there's two parts to our core business. One is the deep inside, which is obviously what we're here to talk about. But the core differentiator is that we've built peer-to-peer networks with trust, right? So if you look at gaming, AI, IoT, robotics, all these industries operate on a centralized server model. What we do is we remove the need for centralized servers entirely, or even decentralized servers. So your core live ops runs entirely peer-to-peer. That's the core part of the protocol that differentiates us from everybody.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. We will dig into that a little bit more in more depth after I introduce the rest of our guests. Thank you for that. Next up, we have Cheng, CFO and driving force at Akash Network since 2020, I believe. as a key architect of the super cloud, an open marketplace for affordable permissionless cloud computing. Cheng is helping reshape internet economics with decentralized innovation. Welcome. Welcome,
Thank
Cheng.
you, Neil. Pleasure to be here. Hey, Mar. Pleasure to be here. And actually, 2020 is correct. Time flies. Calling in here from Austin. Happy to be here. And one tiny amendment is at the start of this year or late last year, I actually took on the COO role. So I primarily just go by them. I identify as an operator.
You're an operator, and okay, very good. Thank you for the clarification. The
words.
My vast team of AI researchers have been known to make mistakes, so I appreciate that.
Oh, not at all. This industry moves quickly, and everyone wears a ton of hats. So,
yeah, absolutely. That's it exactly. News is old news very quickly here. And last, Dr. Felix from founder and CEO of aZen Protocol, with a focus on extending deep in personal data and AI. He's building a transparent ecosystem that empowers users in digital advertising and edge computing, putting control back in their hands. Welcome.
Thank you.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that a fair?
I don't know where you get that from. Do you get
I
that
don't know.
from?
This is the research that our AI.
Okay, AI. Look, that's a problem of AI. Sometimes they maybe pick the wrong information and they try
completely.
to put all the pieces together, and actually it's not the right puzzle.
Yeah. Listen, 100%. The hallucinations are real. But I like to introduce people using that because that's like
that's totally no problem. Actually, this is the interesting part.
Yeah. So feel free to correct anything that I got wrong. There's no pride here.
I started my research back in 2010, far before the name of decentralized computing or deepin whatsoever. My research topic is computer resource optimization, which means how to utilize computer resource and then execution for the different tasks and at the best commercial feasibility kind of things. So that's back in more than 15 years ago. And so aZen Protocol, what we've done is we are transforming aZen Protocol, computer resource into NFT. This is not a picture. NFT is a code. So then use the smart contract to utilize the computer resource. Then you can deploy your computing work. So this is to be able to run any computer, deploy your work or building a deep infrastructure based on, doesn't matter what kind of a resource, what kind of an operation system. It's in the research lab, it's okay, but technically or commercially, it's a challenge because you have to deliver something more like just like Amma said, he wanted to build a Web3 AWS, So how can you beat AWS? You have to be faster, cheaper, and more efficient. So my job is, my profession actually is tech transfer. So that's my work to develop something or deliver something in the commercial world, which is people can really use it and simple. So what we have done is that instead of making these very protocols are normally complicated or sophisticated in a different ways, complicated. So what we develop is say a light version, for example, so people very easy to use. So I call these called app as a service. So the solution is that developers, they can develop an app, and then develop an app based on the different infrastructure is very simple. Then you can deploy the app, and then use also different way. You can use a smart contract to utilize a resource, or instead of a resource, you utilize the application. Then you can deliver the commercial solution. And then next challenge, what kind of commercial solution people willing to buy, to want to pay for it. So decentralized. When I look at it, what kind of work has to be decentralized and can be diversity. people talk about edge computing, but edge computing, for example, if you're gonna do the city, for example, traffic control, you have to be get a contract from the city council, government, and diversity of the diversity of the device doesn't work. This kind of application, so. Then we do some, of course, and not just research. In the last 10 years, not 10 years, about 5 years, we started use this location. We looking for location-based business. So what's the best application for location-based business and the diversity? Doesn't matter what kind of a device. That's social media marketing. Because the social media is location based, the diversity is great. If it's in one place, it doesn't work. So then we develop a project, a product, a service, provide a digital traffic or for also the different business, or you can call this digital traffic, say user acquisition or customer acquisition or sales. Now I call that AI sales agent. So 2 years ago, I exited my Web2 business. Our revenue is 28 million. So we provide a service for e-commerce, gaming, entertainment, and all these kind of big business. And now I come to a new, take a new challenge, which is Web3. So we provide a service for Web3 project for user on board, token sales, TGE. So from the bottom, which is layer 0, infrastructure to application. That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Thanks for the explanation. Yeah, and it's always interesting. I suppose I would have come into Web3 with a very commercial mindset. Having worked in marketing, having worked in business development, and thinking my way through how do you build something from nothing. So yeah, it's always nice to have conversations with people who are thinking along that lines as well, and to kind of get into the weeds a little bit in those kinds of themes. Amar, do you want to maybe just talk a little bit more about Tashi and how you got into Tashi? I suppose what inspired you to get into the DeepIn side of things? AWS, I would imagine, isn't the easiest of things to decide to try and take on. Or at least if somebody who's afraid of solving big problems isn't going to jump headlong into taking on AWS, is my guess. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that for us?
For sure. So I've been in the startup world for about 15 years. Everything from primarily on the business side, everything from investing. Started on venture investing, then was doing more venture building, so early stage stuff. Then was with more late stage companies like Uber and Grab, helped them scale across Asia. And I started my own startup, which was a Web2 company in 2020. And that's when I got the Web3 bug, in the last cycle, just started via friends doing some investing. And then I went deep and down the rabbit hole to understand that what's the blockchain piece? Because, when you kind of see it as a business guy, you have the last cycle was all about NFTs and you have your tokens, etc. But it's hard to understand what's the underlying value. So when I went deep down the rabbit hole and understood, what blockchain really is and what it can mean from a tech standpoint in terms of looking at underlying tech stacks, what are the different problems it solves, and what are the areas it kind of can scale in, I kind of just got hooked because I felt like it's a no-brainer when you think about it. Another way to look at AWS is that they operate with a 70% margin with about a 35% utilization rate. The moment you hear that, you're like, wow, and that just makes you realize what is the demand for compute, right? So when we say we're taking on AWS, I think it's less so being like, hey, let's go kill AWS. I think it's such a massive industry that there's going to be room for not like the 3 big players, but for like 300 players, right? So every now and then when you're at an event, I'll meet one bare metal server-based company, which is worth over $1 billion. And you're like, wait, you have no idea who these guys are, right? So that's when you realize the demand for compute will only skyrocket in our lifetimes. And I think how Tashi came about for me was I got in touch with, so I have two other co-founders. One of them, Jay, is a business guy, kind of knows everyone in the business ecosystem, has his own venture fund, has done a lot of very successful things in life. And he knew our third co-founder, Ken, who was a founding member at Hedera Hashgraph. So Ken has been one of those deep tech guys who's been building in blockchain for over 10 years. And he's a big fan of the coding language Rust. And, being in this world, he found an opportunity of using this technology to solve a real problem. And he called us up and said, like, hey guys, I have an idea that we can incorporate around. And when I sat down and I heard his thoughts, that what we were thinking about, which is you're running networks that can connect peer to peer. And why this is critical and it's important is because when you think back to even just as little as 10 years ago, about 40 to 50% of the internet was running peer to peer, right? That's in the BitTorrent days. That went down for two reasons. One, because computing demand skyrocketed and everybody needed reliability. And that's what the cloud companies provide. The second part is trust, right? So when you're doing peer to peer, one of the things you potentially compromise on is that who's the arbiter of truth. So we were able to, in this process, combine the benefits of both. So you're running your peer to peer network while running super fast edge-based consensus at the same time. So our consensus hop happens at about 30 milliseconds, which is, almost negligible in terms of time and speed. And we've kind of baked it into Web2 based products, right? So that's kind of the core thesis. So we were like, hey, if you're playing a multiplayer game and you have an AWS server for which you pay millions, we can cut that down by 90%, right? So conceptually, it was a massive opportunity. And again, like there'll be folks who will prefer that model. There are lots of other industries that, centralized servers are better with. We're seeing a massive move from AWS to bare metal, right? Like you kind of think back to the journey. It used to be people would have their own servers, then they went to the cloud. And now more and more folks, especially like in the gaming industry, are going back to bare metal because they kind of understand there's such high margins in the cloud business that it's actually better to have your own servers and then have a few cloud servers distributed around the world where you need, there's a possibility of load, but you can bear majority of the cost, run at a high operational efficiency, right? So when we kind of come in, we're like, hey, you don't need servers. People are like, that's refreshing. How does this work? So that kind of really excited me. We went out and did a bunch of research in the product market side to understand who are the people who care about it. Like we're working on robotics right now, which is super interesting and exciting. And it's a similar thesis, right? That right now, there's barely any robots in the world. So, each person might have one robot. But imagine, 10 years down the line, you go into a restaurant, there's 20 robots in there, cooking, cleaning, serving, doing everything. Those robots should be coordinating locally. So right now, when all the developers are training these robots, they're doing it via a centralized server. And that actually adds both cost and speed. And latency, right? Because your robot is pinging a server which is not necessarily at a data center that's near you. If you're in Singapore, the data center is nearby. But if you're running, say, a robot swarm, or you have a gaming multiplayer game happening in the Philippines, then your data center is not near you. You are actually adding ping. So this kind of works out in a very meaningful way. And these are real industry problems, right? So we're not going in and saying that, hey, go decentralize your tech stack. Like that's not our thought. And it's more like, hey, you are facing this problem. Like the gaming industry has a very real problem right now. If you go check out Stop Killing Games, it's a massive movement that's going on because the game studios have shut down games that players have paid for. And the players are unhappy because I'm like, I expect I can play this game. I paid you $100 for this game, right? But it's the unit economics don't make sense for the game studio beyond a point. So we're like, hey, this is right in the middle. We understand as a business guy that what the business, the game studios issues are, and as a player, what their issues are. So just the last bit is our deepen is our services layer, right? So the peer-to-peer is the core part of our business. And then the deepen acts as the services layer that ensures the uptime in comparison to the cloud companies. So there's a whole bunch of things that you require to ensure reliability. And that's one of the reasons peer-to-peer didn't scale. So trust was one of them. The other was things like if one person's behind a firewall, there's all kinds of other small things that pop up. So we've used the deepen, which is our scalable network. We already have about 40,000 nodes live. The goal is to have, and these nodes are free, anyone can download them. The goal is to have one node about 20 milliseconds ping away from anyone in the world. That's when I can say officially that we can compete with AWS, because we can confidently go to the gaming companies and say, hey, I guarantee you, even better uptime than the cloud guys.
Amazing. Do you know how many nodes what's the number? What's the magic number for that? It must be millions, right? I would have thought. I guess it depends on the latency and the speed of the internet everywhere.
Yeah, I think we want to get to our magic number that we internally focused on is 1 million nodes. I think we'll be able to solve the problem in terms of giving confidence to the game studios in about anywhere around 200,000 nodes, because we're also strategic in terms of how we're looking at it. We have our internal map that we'll publish quite soon. And the idea is that as long as you have enough nodes spread out around the world, that gives you enough confidence to say that we can guarantee that uptime. The beauty about one of the things is that the services running on our nodes are very lightweight, right? The nodes themselves are lightweight and the services are lightweight. So you're not running full compute on these nodes. The full compute actually happens peer-to-peer. So the node is only doing like a relay service, for example, connecting two players, etc. So it's not that if one node is being used by someone, right? As long as there's a node there, it'll be able to service a bunch of different sessions at the same point of time.
Cool. And the node what does the node run on? Is it a desktop-based node, or do you have a specific hardware for it?
It's super lightweight. It can run on any desktop. So the mobile version isn't out yet, but it can run on a Raspberry Pi as well.
Wow. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Amar. That's really helpful, and I think a great description of everything that you guys are doing. I certainly have a much better idea, so I'm sure our audience do too. Cheng, give you a chance to tell us a little bit about Akash Network and what you're doing.
Yeah, it would be a pleasure. I mean, Akash, we are one of the, I think Amar, you said in 2020 into the space, right? I'm not sure exactly how long Tashi has been online. Akash is a bit of an ancient one, I suppose, in this space, where we got started quite a bit ago. The idea germinated, I think, over a decade ago from our co-founders, Greg and Adam. At that point, it had a different approach, and blockchain wasn't really, I think, a useful tool at that point in time to develop applications, develop technology. And so about in 2019, 2020 is when I think Ethereum, and at that point, Cosmos, started proliferating. And that's when the decision was made to kind of go towards the kind of the Web3 route, right? And here we are today, 5 years later since TG. And so it's been quite an exciting ride. What we're working on at Akash, I do want to emphasize one point I think both my guests here, Amar and Dr. Felix, had mentioned, is meeting the users where they are and decreasing the barrier to entry is absolutely essential. So one of the big kind of soapboxes, or small soapboxes, I've been on since I joined the space is you got to meet the people where they are, and users, pardon my French, do not give a crap what your underpinning backbone technology is. They want it to work. They want it to work fast, and they want it to work exactly how they always think and experience their applications, right? If you think you and us, right, when we're typing in, I don't know, a web address, do we go and I'm trying to understand like what is it that's going on in the HTTPS protocol to like make the internet work? No, we don't give a shit. No. Sorry. It's just, we just want it to work, right? Totally. When we send money to each other on Venmo or Zelle or wherever, or bank transfer, how does the ACH system or SWIFT system work behind the scenes? We don't care. We press number go, money in your account. That's all that matters. And so that ethos is really what Akash Network has been trying to embody over the last couple of years. Is we built the baseline protocol, get the compute working. For those of you don't know, Akash is also kind of a peer-to-peer decentralized cloud, right? But the way we describe ourselves is we're a marketplace. So we bring together heterogeneous resources from across the globe. It could be things like laptops all the way to data centers, and we primarily focus on data centers for now. And bring all of these disparate resources together in a single interface that you can use. So like Uber bringing together a bunch of vehicles, right? Airbnb bringing together a bunch of real estate, right? Rentals and whatnot, from bungalows to mansions. And so Akash is doing the same thing for compute resources. And in terms of the ethos we're trying to embody of meeting the users where they are, one of the things that we've done over the last year and we're continuing to do is this push to parity, we call it internally and externally on our roadmap. And the parity is not just a feature set or feature richness that can allow us to reasonably say there is essentially no user experience differentiator or trade-off, right? When you go to AWS or Azure, that's the path that we're going to be on for quite a while. But one of the big things that we're able to accomplish is you no longer have to directly interact with cryptocurrency in order to use the Akash network for compute resources, whether you're buying or selling, right? And that's a huge lift. That's when we really saw our statistics and utilization really skyrocket, right? Because then the user can use their existing workflows, i.e. put their credit card on, swipe the credit card, and everything works as normal. But on the back end is when all of the kind of blockchain infrastructure and the technology really takes over and does the Web3 stuff, right, that we all know and love. And so I think that's an incredibly important part of really adoption is meeting users where they are, decreasing friction. And, as builders and developers, I'm sure we all understand here, the more barriers, the more clicks, the more steps we put in the way, the lower the chance of adoption, right? And especially growth at scale. So yeah, I think the ethos wise, I think that wraps up exactly where we're going towards over the course of the next, I think, couple of months and probably closer to a year. We're working on really growing that capacity out dramatically. So Akash Network currently has about 800 to 1,000 GPUs on the network, and we want to be able to 10x that over the next 12 months or so. And so there are various, obviously, bootstrapping challenges that we have to contend with as a network, two-sided marketplace, where you have supply and demand, you have to constantly balance the two. But we really want to get GPU probably numbers up to a 10x point, and of course utilization commensurate with that as well. And last but not least is bringing on cutting edge chips, right? The B200s, B300s, Pro 6000s, all of these things that AI people, toys want to play with, toys that AI folks and developers want to play with. We want to get kind of the next tranche of GPUs online and see where our users can be developed, right? What people are using it for, and whether or not there's any kind of exciting path to pursue, right? Kind of small steps there. The last big thing I'll say, and I'll turn it over back to you in the newsroom, Neil, is working on bringing on a kind of this entire different concept, which is protocol on compute, POC, vis-a-vis the Star Cluster program that we announced at Accelerator, which is the premier kind of event that we host on an annual basis with, kind of Akash around, right? Everything centered around apps deployed on Akash, apps being developed, et cetera. And so the Star Cluster program aims to bring on GPUs that are owned by the network and ultimately brought on to made available, right? Rather than bringing on resources that are kind of contributed by peers only, is to create another layer of computation that's going to be foundational and permanent, that can be on the network and counted on no matter what. So that's something we're going to be pursuing, and hopefully we'll crack that nut by the end of this year. That's
going to be owned by Akash, will it?
Yeah, so that'll be owned by Akash Network and kind of the principals involved, and we're still figuring out the exact parameters, because it is, as you can imagine, it is not cheap and it is not easy to do. So we're trying to figure out exactly how we can do that, whether it's a separate vehicle. Ultimately, it'll be on Akash and completely dedicated to Akash for the duration of that hardware's life cycle. So from beginning until the thing burns out, essentially.
Is the decision to build the Star Cluster, did that stem from the fact that, like, at the moment there's this kind of, I guess, this open secret, or if you want to call it that, in DeepIn, that GPUs are where the money is at? That's where the best, it's your premium grade resources that can be contributed to the demand that's in DeepIn at the moment, and that's where people are going to earn. It seems like that's kind of the case at the moment. But at the same time, when you look at least on the consumer side, GPUs are cheaper, but also obviously less powerful when you're comparing them to like the absolute cutting edge AI, like GPUs that were specifically designed to work for AI.
For sure.
Is that why? Because you just can't get the horsepower that you need from consumers?
It's a nuanced question. So I'll answer the last question first, which is, what's the kind of differentiator in server grade GPUs versus consumer grade? It really depends on the use case, right? So from training and fine tuning I'm sure Dr. Felix, right, at the kind of the core layer, like how do you create models and how do you ultimately get them useful, right? Training and fine tuning, those particular processes currently, at least, is predominantly happen on cutting edge chips, right? You're not going to be able to get away from that yet. However, there are protocols out there, decentralized AI protocols like News or Pluralis, Prime Intellect, et cetera, who are working on cracking this nut, right? News just came out with a decentralized trained, I suppose, 405B model. I think News 405B last week or 2 weeks ago. That was kind of a foundational breakthrough, right? Previous to that, Jensen did, I think, a 70B billion parameter model. So that part of the technology stack is moving in a direction where decentralization won't be a trade-off anymore, right? But we have to solve that with technology, different protocols, et cetera. But having said that, currently the state of things as they exist now, you do need server grade, right, ultra cutting edge chips in order to do cutting edge work. So that's one part. In terms of users who are doing inference, however, you can go to consumer grade stuff just as easily, right? You can go to a distributed network, especially if you want to go to the hyper edge, right? And latency is a big issue, and especially if your model isn't too large. And furthermore, if the computational costs aren't gigantic, where like the model itself can fit physically, the memory can fit onto the chip. That's absolutely imperative. So to answer that particular question, right, it really depends on the use case, but we're moving towards a direction where decentralization, hyper decentralization, will actually be a huge boon, I think, to AI. And in terms of the economics, you're absolutely right. It's a bit more than just the economics itself, but it's about what the users can count on. So right now, Akash is completely permissionless, and it always will be, right? And people can join and leave as they please. But when developers want to build a substantial application that scales to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users, they want to know, can I count on this infrastructure to be there when I need it? Can I scale when I need it, right? And so that's one of the reasons to bring on this kind of core layer of compute also, is to create this foundation that can't be perturbed, right? It's like, hey, you want these 100 chips are always going to be here, just picking them out of the air, and you can always count on them. And these resources are going to be benchmarked. They're not going to change. The kind of the topology and performance of the network isn't going to shift over time. And that kind of consistency is really key, that at least for us, that we've seen is really important for a lot of our users and to attract new ones as well.
I mean, the demands, the chips are getting more and more powerful all the time, right? So I would imagine that, like Moore's law or whatever, where, everything is just getting more powerful all the time. So I'd imagine if you go down the road of, building your own cluster of GPUs, that they're going to have to be, like, there'd have to be an upgrade path there and a growth path.
Yeah, it depends. It really does, man. It's really interesting. I think you asked the right question. I don't have the definitive answer. I think if I had that crystal ball, we would be all doing this from Mars or something, right? But I think the idea here,
you'd be too rich to be coming on any podcast with coffee in the name. That's for sure.
No way, man.
Yeah.
This is I love talking with you guys, and then I think environments and communities like this that you built, Neil, is why we're here, right? But I think it's not necessarily just about always pursuing the cutting edge per se, because a lot of users, depending on what they're doing, right, they're also running businesses. As Mara, Dr. Felix, you guys know, you want to optimize for costs on your end, right? You don't want to be necessarily paying for the best and the greatest all the time. If you're taking a car to go buy groceries, you're like, do I want a Ferrari for this, or just like my Honda Civic, right? And so you don't necessarily need the best and the most powerful all the time. It really depends on the use case. And so a lot of users, what we've seen in customers of ours, they're trying to really optimize their price performance. Like, what is the best performance I can get at this price point? Because they understand their unit economics. And since they're building a business, they're like, I can't go above this, but what is the most juice I can squeeze with this particular dollar? And that's the key here. And for any DePIN network, and specifically for us in a GPU network, finding success, I don't necessarily think is always chasing the biggest, most powerful thing out there is finding the core that works for you and your customer base based on your product suite and all that stuff. So that's the area where we've kind of, I think we've nailed, after finding product market fit and all that stuff. And we're trying to exploit that and grow that particular segment. And while doing that, right, when I said bringing on cutting edge chips, we want to be able to not just develop the core customer segment we already know and have, but also experiment with another segment and see if we can bring those onto the network as well, right? And that's the impetus for bringing on more, different chips on the cutting edge, right? To see if we can crack that customer segment.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'd like to change tack a little bit and just ask about interoperability and, how you guys see interoperability. It just feels like there's a lot of, obviously there's a proliferation of DeepIn projects across every layer one. We're on Solana, but I believe, Cheng, you guys are on Cosmos SDK, or at least you were back at the start. I actually met, funny side story, I met, the first time I ever was introduced to anybody from Akash was in Cosmoverse in Colombia a few years back. You guys were there, and so yeah, it was interesting. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys see interoperability? Do you think it's important to have cross-network collaboration, or do you think each DeepIn is going to be in a silo by itself? I know on the customer-facing end, they're not going to want to. They don't care, right? It's like driving your car. You don't care how the engine works. A lot of people don't even care if it's electric or whatever beyond the pros and cons. How far can it go, etc. Certainly it was something that I experienced in Cosmos was that, it's supposed to be the chain of chains and there's a lot of things, but actually in reality, there are definitely challenges with siloed layer ones, bridges, security, et cetera. So I'm just curious about what your guys' thoughts are on interoperability, whether or not it's important. Is there things that you're doing to make it a non-issue in your project? And maybe Dr. Felix, do you want to go first? And then Amar?
I think it's a decentralized infrastructure. So more important is about the infrastructure. And I think blockchain, which chain you're running on, is not so much relevant. Doesn't matter as long as can transfer and the gas fee is cheap and fast enough. And it depends if it's not fast enough and if it's too expensive, and they just change your a structure and make it cheaper. You can use a different way to make it cheaper instead of so this is I think it's almost irrelevant. It doesn't matter which chain you're gonna deploy on. For us, as long as there's where's the liquidity and where's the money, we can just build on whatever. Doesn't really matter because our focus is decentralized physical infrastructure. That's our key. Mm-hmm. And whatever, this is all the transactions. Doesn't matter where is all the transactions. So that's what I think. And sorry, I have to go back to the previous question. The topic. Akash, you guys started building the decentralized GPU, right? Network. I think you have a very fair comment. Decentralized actually in many ways not as efficient and reliable as centralized in some way. So I've done this back in 2018, and I utilized in China there are like hundreds and not thousands of called internet cafe. People go to gaming bar. So there's a GPU. When they don't play game, we utilize their GPU. Like I remember that's a 3090 or something, and to build a training platform, and I get an award from NVIDIA because of this. But this is a fucking challenge, So innovation challenge is interesting, but it's very hard to make money. So after that, experience, I coming from more academic and now more into an entrepreneur and the business thinking. So I started building to build applications, solutions for business, because that way, it's a more commercial feasible, more is a commercial business rather than, we accomplish something and the very challenge innovation, but doesn't bring us money. Okay, so that's but I think when things change now, infrastructure much better, the GPU is much better, and the tasks, AI tasks are more diversity. So this is a distributed, GPU network. I think it become more and more commercial feasible. That's go back to the previous topic, which I'm quite interested. Was interested before.
Yeah, I guess just from my side, because we're an aggregator, so obviously, we have to solve the problem of interoperability in a sense, but it can be a tricky problem to solve in some ways because, for example, like if somebody on Havelo has mined 10 different tokens and they're all from different projects across different ecosystems, when we go to organize withdrawals or something like that, and we want to just give people, we want to make it simple. So we just want to give people a button that they can click that goes, give me that in my bank account, please. There's a somewhat laborious, decentralized technology issue to solve for that because it's a lot of bridging and converting, and some currencies aren't on some chains, etc. So I guess from my side, maybe it's a bigger problem for us than it is for you guys.
So I think one thing I'd want to add in there is that there's two kind of sides to this ecosystem, right? So you have your demand side and then your supply side, right? And then you have to first figure out on the demand side if there's any interoperability related issue, right? So if you're able to bring in the compute, the buyer who's looking for the compute cares about how easy is it for me to use. Like they don't even care about tokens, right? So from our perspective, what we're trying to do is make our solution Web 2 focused, right? So a developer, if they're building a game on Unity or Unreal, they can just plug in and have Tashi in the backend, right? So they don't even interact with any tokens related activity. So I think it gets solved there, and that's how you essentially scale. Because I feel like the biggest challenge that DeepIn has right now is where does the demand exist, right? And then when you have the supply side, that's where you have the interoperability issue, right? Because you have all these communities of people saying, hey, I can run 100 nodes on my device. I'll run Grass, I'll run Gradient, I'll run Havelo, I'll run 100 things. And then you kind of come together and then have this massive ecosystem. And then you have that's where the fragmentation happens, right? And I think that that's just the crypto challenge. And I think in some ways, at least the way kind of we think about it is that we need to give our supply side enough or make their user experience as seamless as possible. For example, we'll allow one-click nodes. Our nodes will be on Solana. So it's kind of as seamless as we want it to be. But I can imagine your token is already live. We'll go live in a month. The moment your token is live and you're on 20 exchanges, then you have liquidity to manage. So I think there's 100 different challenges that the token side of the business has, which don't necessarily apply on the business side, and vice versa, right? So I think it's more about you're running two different businesses and solving challenges for two different ecosystems. One, I think, quick other thought, like I think you said, was in just a general comment that I think the GPU business is the more profitable one. I think we've been learning as we've been going down the DeepIn path that actually the CPU business has higher margins because like everybody on the GPU side is because there's everyone on the crypto side has built amazing narratives, and that's obviously allowed them to do a lot of stuff. But if you kind of look at the larger players, when we were talking to folks, they were like, hey, the CPU business, you have no idea, like the demand for that stuff is insane. Like 2 weeks back, I was chatting with a friend of mine who's built a business in the last 3 years by just renting out space from AWS data centers and converting that to mini bare metal servers that they know somehow to optimize. That's their core secret sauce. And it's a 100 million top line company, right? So there's all these kind of, pockets of businesses that are real businesses, how many folks do we kind of know right now that are building 100 million top line businesses in crypto, right? It's a very small number. The moment you kind of move to that world, which is your demand focused, your product is demand focused, I think the other problems get solved along the way. That's how we're kind of thinking about things.
Do you think that's the biggest challenge in DeepIn at the moment? Is like on the demand side, the projects just aren't focused enough commercially on the demand side, like finding the customers basically.
So I think that's the high level right problem statement. There's sub problem statements, I think, as Dr. Felix and Cheng were talking about, because how do you guarantee uptime when you're talking about decentralized compute resources? Do they match up with everything else out there? Is the user experience as seamless, right? So it's not as simple as just getting demand. It's also ensuring that when you're going out there and competing with anybody else, because your customer doesn't necessarily care about decentralized, right? Like that's a word that we like and it's fun, and in some cases it's critical, but in most cases they care about reliability. Like that's the number one thing, and number two is cost. I think because we can cut cost by 90%, we thought a lot of folks would care about that. We realized reliability and ease of use are actually of prime importance. Like that's the fundamental part that you need to solve for demand, right? And I think that's where the challenge is. And once you can, you solve that, and you're saying like, hey, it's as easy to use a DeepIn, which could be whichever one it is, in comparison to another one, say AWS. That's when I think the demand challenge gets solved, right? And then you obviously have to build your B2B demand sales teams and all these guys, right? If you think about it, if I go out to compete with an AWS sales teams, I built B2B businesses before. I've kind of set up Grab's B2B business scale that to 100 million top line. You have a lot of resources at hand, right? Now you're going out and taking on those guys. Like it's not that easy. So I think there's many challenges that are there, but I think because the opportunity in the market is massive, that's where I think the focus should be of a lot of the companies.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's technology and a commercial problem, both of which need to be solved.
Exactly.
Chen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, for sure. I co-sign much of that from your original question, Neil. Right? Like, is interoperability important? I think it is. And to go back to kind of the theme that I was harping on in my first rant is leave the interoperability to the developers, to us, right? To the builders. Interoperability, I think, is super duper important. And I feel like I don't mean to, badmouth the industry all at once, right? But I think what we've done as an industry is export the hard stuff to the users. Like, hey, you know what? We're not going to build a great UI. Our UX is going to suck. And interoperability, you're going to have to cross through all of these questionable, often tricky bridges and sweat as one thing jumps from one network to another, and a lot of that is being solved right to this day. So I think interoperability is super duper important, and I think it's something we as an industry should not be lazy about and build that into like our core offering, right? Such that it's not something that the end user has to then research on how to get from one thing to another. Kind of another parallel in normal life is, right now, if you want to switch from an iPhone to an Android phone or vice versa, there are applications that let you seamlessly do this, right? Versus if you go back 10 years ago, it was really, really hard, and the switching costs are super high, right? And that's kind of the path I think we need to go on, first of all. In terms of demand, I think to answer your other question, is demand broadly the challenge? I think so, but to Amar's point, there are kind of sub items within there, and I think, again, it's the where are your users and meet them, right? What do they do? And how do they operate in their everyday life? And that's where you have to get them. I mean, what are they seeking? Like, what kind of value are they going to bring to the network? In addition to what exchange will they get for that value that they bring? So I think that's super important. So for those who are, let's just say, going on to any one of our networks and just like providing resources if you're, let's just say, providing resources and you're, mining the token, let's just call it, using bastardizing a term, but what are you then bringing to the network other than those particular resources? Are they going to be good? Are they going to be reliable? There are all of these, like, I think, metrics that are core and central. So all of those, I think, items really, really matter. Right. But yeah, the core thesis, I think it's always users, right? DAU, MAUs, MRR, AR, all those. That's ultimately what drives the ball forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess I've worked with a bunch of different projects over the years since I got into this space, and it was always fascinating to me the range, like in those projects, because you've got some very smart commercially focused projects where technology is an enabler, and you've got some very technology focused projects where, like, it feels like, and actually I think in Cosmos it was one of the worst ecosystems for this, worst offenders, which is not to cast aspersions on Cosmos. There's a lot of awesome people in Cosmos doing awesome things, but I just noticed that there was a lot of sort of open source, like almost anti-commercial people in that space, where they were
put
like,
the tech in front of a human,
technology, man, like, and you're like, okay, cool, but like people aren't going to want to use it if it's like you said, if the UX sucks, no one's going to want to use that.
Absolutely.
So like it could be the coolest technology in the world, but it's like one-legged chair,
Exactly. Well said. That is a challenge, and no aspersions taken. I appreciate the straight shooting, and it is true.
Yeah.
And I think Cosmos is definitely a very bad offender of that. It's like, oh, the tech is so great. If you build it, people will come. Like,
yeah,
I don't think that's how it works.
No, pretty sure it doesn't work like that. I think it's well established at this point.
When that movie came out, Field of Dreams, I think that life was very different. Now, when you have vibe coding and AI agents for everything, and you can just put out anything at any point of time. If you're not up to standard and up to mark in terms of what you're delivering, you get no insights. There was a time like creating videos on YouTube would make you a superstar, and now it's like everyone's a video creator.
Yeah, and everybody's using AI now to create the videos because they don't even want to have to do that, go to all that effort of editing themselves and all that stuff. Like, let's get AI to turn this. Let's get AI to write a script, and let's get a video AI to turn that into a video, and then use this algorithm and formula to create just a very search optimized, click hungry sort of I don't know. This whole somebody was trying. I saw an ad on Instagram the other day. Somebody selling a course on how to actually build that out. Your own YouTube channel. So it's like, once people are selling training on how to do that stuff.
It's scary. I think what I'm afraid of there is like a lot of things where like convergence is one thing, where everyone's thoughts and ideas, like the lack of creativity and all this kind of stuff, right, ultimately converges because the models will favor one path or another, right? There's no model is going to be equally distributed. So there's going to be some convergence. And I think for folks who are really young, I mean, Dr. Felix, you've been through like academia and all that stuff, right? I think you can probably speak to this better than myself. Is I think through education, one of the things that you learn is kind of to learn how to learn, and from like disparate resources and all that kind of stuff, and weaving together information, synthesizing, right, building neural pathways, not just the ones that the neural pathways, if you will, that AI models build. But if you kind of just overly rely on it, there's no. How do you, I guess, acquire foundational core knowledge that isn't just available on an AI model? That's an interesting question. Yeah.
Hi guys, sorry I have to go. I've got another meeting coming up in 2 minutes. Okay.
No problem.
Thank you. Good to have you guys.
Do you want to just leave us with your some final words about where people can learn more about your project and can follow you on X and all that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So yes, you can check out our aZen protocol at Twitter, or just if you type Google aZen, you will find us. Thank you for having me, and have a good time. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us.
Take care. Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of getting to the top of the hour, guys. So do you guys want to, do you have any final words you want to offer, or anything else you want to talk about or say before we wrap up?
Amar, do you want to go first, or?
Sure, happy to. So very excited to have been here. Thank you so much for having us. We are at Tashi Protocol on X. Our token will get launched next month, so keep a lookout. We just dropped our roadmap for what's coming in the next few months. Lots of exciting things, and looking forward to more such spaces in the future, hopefully.
Are you how are you doing the token launch? Are you IDOing or are you launch pads? What way are you doing?
Oh, you've opened a can of worms right now. We will definitely be on a DEX. We're exploring. We've chatted with a few centralized exchanges. We have a bunch of offers. We're dilly-dallying mentally in terms of what decision to make. Everyone we speak to seems to be telling us not to do it. So it's one of those tricky moments where, like, it was probably the only path. Everyone used to say, like, that's the only option. But now we've spoken with a lot of well-known, well-regarded founders and advisors in the past few weeks who are like, just go on the DEX paths, build out the network, and then come back for the centralized exchanges. Still deciding, but yeah, love your thoughts.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. I've been through a bunch of TGs and it's changed so much, my God, since 2017. The first time I was involved with an ICO and a project that was ICOing, my God, it's such a different landscape. I mean, timing is just so important. I don't want to, again, like you say, can of worms. If you want to have a chat about it, I'm happy to sometime, but it's, yeah. Cheng?
Maybe pick that up offline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because otherwise it'll be a 2-hour podcast. Might be interesting though, actually, to talk about tokens sometime.
We can do another token coffee hour. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's do it. I'm there for that. I spent most of the last couple of days trying to write an article, trying to put together all my thoughts about tokens and launches, and tokenomics actually more generally. Oh,
I think Cheng is not excited about token launches right now. He's one of the guys. Their token has been live for a long time. They caught the right cycles.
Was it something we said, Cheng?
Oh, yeah. No. Suddenly my like emergency restart is the best way.
No worries.
No, not at all.
Sorry.
Apologies, gentlemen.
Apologies. Do you want to give us your final words?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, well, I'm Cheng. You can find me on X at ChengizKhan, and then Akash Network is obviously the protocol name. We've been around for quite a bit. You can definitely look for us there. Next steps we're working on, like I said, bringing on those cutting edge resources to really test that particular customer segment. Building a bona fide business, as it turns out, pretty hard. In addition to cutting edge tech that you're trying to do at the same time. So that's what we're trying to really balance. And last but not least is we are also working on something as part of that strategy, right? We want kind of barbell it. It's to say, hey, here on the hyper cutting edge and then super powerful, and here on the kind of the most peer-to-peer side of things, right? We're calling this project temporarily like Akash at home. And that's something where we're, historically, obviously, the way Akash Network works, like if you got to do Kubernetes, install Kubernetes, and it all becomes very technical. And to the earlier point of like, how do you meet the users where they are to make it easy? And MR and others, they've done a wonderful job in packaging software in an easy to use manner, right, for everyday users, and you guys as well in Hivelo. So we're following in that kind of footstep to allow users with less powerful machines, who then therefore have a lower economic incentive, at least on Akash Network, to bring their resources on, to do so in a one-click deploy type of fashion. So that's something we're very excited to bring on towards the end of the year as well. So definitely keep a lookout for that.
Yeah, I know our teams have both been talking to each other. Justin, one of our co-founders, is like, huge fanboy for Akash. Sorry, Justin, no offense intended, but yeah, definitely. I mean, we're all fans, obviously, of all DeepIn projects, but he is especially enamored with what you guys are doing. So yeah, hopefully we'll have, it'd be great. I hope we get a chance to all work together in the future through aggregation and all that kind of stuff. So
and interoperability,
yeah.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. There were a couple of questions from the audience, but we didn't get around to that. We've sort of run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming here today and giving your time. It's been a very highbrow discussion, I feel like. I'm so glad that I took loads of creatine today and was able to keep up with that conversation. Thank you both. I'm very excited to see what you guys do in the future. Mar, I'm very excited to try and scoop an early bag for what you guys are doing as a recovering gamer, let's say, and somebody who is trying very hard to build a powerful GPU / gaming rig at the moment. Yeah, I'm very keen to run both your guys' networks and see what happens. So I don't know if I have the chops. Maybe with the Akash at home. I don't think I have the chops otherwise, from what I've heard, Cheng. But yeah, the future's probably looking a bit brighter for me on that one. And
you and me
no
both.
idea what's involved. Yeah, for sure. Or maybe Havelo will aggregate Akash, and then it'll be super simple, because Havelo's a couple clicks and you're good to go. So simple. Your granny's granny could do it.
Indeed.
So
there's your
thanks, gents.
Campaign right there.
That's it.
So simple, your granny's granny can do it.
Exactly. Love that.
And yeah, for the questions, if you want to drop them in Telegram, whatever, happy to kind of type out an answer or something like that. So the audience, gets to have some response. I don't know, up to you how you want to do that, but I'm more than happy to allocate some time to do that for you guys.
Thank you,
for our audience. Yeah.
Likewise.
Thanks. And most of all, thank you to all of you who are tuned in. Again, there's about 3,000 at the moment, but I think most episodes we're getting up close to 100,000 views, sometimes more. So yeah, just a huge thank you to you, our audience, and we will see you again next week. Havelo.com for Havelo information. And yeah, until next week, be kind to each other out there, and we will have more guests. Same time, same place, Tuesday, 3 p.m. CET.